Tonight on Unreported World, Ade Adepitan travels to Mexico City to meet a remarkable group of people who are going inside psychiatric institutions to expose the abusive and inhumane conditions inside. This is no ordinary group of activists. They're all former patients with ongoing mental health problems themselves. You might find some of the scenes in this film distressing.
We're filming undercover in a mental health institution. A young woman has just run up, begging me to rescue her.
Ya no quiero estar aquí, ya quiero mejor irme con mi familia. No estoy.
She's one of thousands called Los Abandonados, the abandoned ones. They're people who suffer from mental health problems and are trapped in Mexico's psychiatric institutions in often abusive and degrading conditions. One group of extraordinary people are determined to do something to help the Abandonados. They meet every week in this community centre. But these people aren't social workers or doctors. This is the Colectivo Chucan, a group fighting for the rights of people with psychiatric disabilities. Now, what makes them unique and the first of their kind in Mexico is that every single one of them has their own psychiatric disability. Natalia Santos is 26, and the group has just elected her as their president. She suffers from paranoid schizophrenia and depression. Only a year ago, Natalia herself was inside a mental health institution.
Es como si las personas de ahí estuvieran encarceladas, viviendo en un infierno.
Her friend Oscar Luna suffers from schizophrenia as well, and calls himself a survivor of Mexican psychiatric institutions.
Es horrible, o sea, te tratan peor que un animal, o sea, sí, irreparable.
Now they plan to turn the tables. They're about to go inside the institutions to gather evidence and expose the conditions they endured and thousands of others still do. And I'm going to join them.
Y esta es la revolución de los locos.
They've come together to help each other, and now they want to take it to another level by going into some psychiatric hospitals and forcing change. 13 years ago, a widely publicised investigation by Disability Rights International found atrocious and inhumane conditions inside several psychiatric institutions in Mexico. The government of Mexico promised to clean up its act and even spearheaded the creation of a UN convention protecting the rights of the disabled. But the Colectivo believe that in reality, nothing has changed. The next morning, I joined Natalia at the Colectivo office. The group have been working for months to get the permission to visit patients inside institutions. Natalia has the task of calling the authorities.
Sí. Podrían comunicar en dirección. Hablo de una organización Colectivo Chucan.
She's telling them it's a chance for patients to meet people who understand what they're going through.
Las condiciones.
That's true, but secretly she also wants to document the conditions inside.
Sí cuesta mucho trabajo que a uno le den el permiso para entrar. Me pidieron un oficio.
Because of her schizophrenia, every phone call is an ordeal.
Yo me imagino en mi cabeza que la gente dice cosas de mí. Entonces, el escuchar reír a una persona o hablar es muy difícil para mí.
Today's the day of the first visit. It's time for action. We're going off to our first institution with the Colectivo. They've devised a plan. half of the group are going to distract some of the members of the staff, and then we're going to go off with Natalia to meet some of the patients and see the conditions that they're living in. CAIS Villa Mujeres is an institution run by Mexico City local government, which holds over 380 women. They're expecting the colectivo this morning, but not a film crew. Con el cámara vamos a tener problemas.
Sí.
We hide the camera and take it out once we're allowed inside. We see very few staff. Many of the women have been held here for decades, abandoned by their families, with little chance of ever leaving. I head for the patients' living quarters and begin to film. The institution knew we were coming and so had the chance to clean up. I mean, this is just crazy. There's human feces on the floor. There's flies everywhere. The stench is it's just disgusting. The hygiene situation here is just zero. Even the patients are covering their faces. The whole place is a human toilet. The whole place. In the corridor outside, two women are tied to their wheelchairs. One of the women is in pain and trying to free herself. There are no nurses in sight. Priscilla Rodriguez, a disability rights campaigner who's advising Colectivo, approaches them.
Está muy apretado.
Mucho.
Muy apretado.
Y me lo quiero quitar por esto.
It's too tight. It's too...
Pero,
You need to... Can you loosen it?
ay no, mira nomás, mete la mano. Ay no.
This is a practice that's quite prevalent in these institutions where they tie patients up to their wheelchairs and they leave them there. No one should ever be tied to a wheelchair, not against their own will. It's ridiculous. According to the UN, there can be no justification for the use of physical restraints on patients with psychiatric disabilities. Tying up a patient, even for a short period of time, may constitute torture.
Ay no.
Eventually, a nurse spots us untying the woman.
Ay no. Ay no. Ay no. Mete la mano. Ay no.
Mete la mano.
Ay no.
Exactamente. A ver, no está muy apretado, mira.
Ay no.
Pero ella
Ay, no.
Pero entonces,
Los pelos,
o sea, ¿qué
mire.
solución habría?
Ay no.
Mire que están
pues ella tiene que
Ay, no.
necesita diferente silla. The nurse tells us she's one of only 2 people looking after the 60 patients in this area. So these 2 women are tied up from the moment they wake until 4 in the afternoon. ¿Qué te parece de estas condiciones?
No muy buenas, pero pues así trabajamos.
Si tiene...
Antes trabajábamos un poquito mejor. Ahorita con el nuevo presupuesto como que se ha escaseado y se ha bajado.
Una persona en tu familia, ¿tú vas a dejar vivir aquí?
Es que ellas son personas que son rechazadas. O sea, si no están aquí estarían en la calle.
I rejoin the main group where Natalia is talking to some patients and documenting their stories.
¿Y cuánto tiempo llevas aquí?
Como 6 o 7 años.
¿Hay aquí agua? ¿Agua para bañarse?
Nomás en ratos.
Nada más en ratos.
No tengo ni papel de baño.
For the patients, the visit is a huge moment. Many have been abandoned by their families, spending their days with nothing to do, with no meaningful rehabilitation. It's effectively a life sentence with no chance of appeal.
¿Y qué te dicen? ¿Que hasta que vengan por ti?
Sí.
Es indignante, se ve claramente que está muy mal la calidad de vida de estas personas y que muchas de las personas están en un gran deterioro por estar mucho tiempo aquí en estos lugares.
The visit leaves Colectivo members deeply upset. But they are determined to record their findings.
Yo podría ser una de esas personas, abandonado, olvidado, maltratado, porque yo soy una persona como ellas.
Colectivo members have always known making these visits can pose a risk to their own mental health because they bring back painful memories of their time in institutions.
A mí una ocasión me amarraron, me ocasionó tal impacto que después yo tuve alucinaciones. Es decir, una hora que pasó, una media hora, ahora ellos de día y noche, no, eso era horrible.
Since leaving the institution last year, Natalia has lived at home with her parents. She was hospitalized after making an attempt on her own life. She shows me the entries in her diary from that time.
Las voces no me dejan en paz, me torturan los pensamientos negativos, no puedo tener tranquilidad.
¿Y cuántas veces has intentado hacer suicidio?
4 veces más o menos.
Her parents, Rebecca and Celedonio, tell me they took her to an institution because they were so worried.
Antes, cuando ella nos decía que nosotros éramos sus primeros enemigos y no nos quería ver. Yo la veía una fuerza que tenía que entre 4 no la podíamos controlar.
They took her back as soon as they could, but many families in Mexico are forced to abandon their relatives in institutions because they can't afford the high cost of drugs.
Imagínate, para comprar 11 medicamentos era muy difícil. O sea, dependíamos de mi papá nada más. Mi familia ha sido mi motor principal para que yo siga adelante.
Most people with mental health problems in Mexico who live outside institutions do so thanks to the support of their relatives. The next morning, I meet Colectivo member Oscar Luna, who suffers from schizophrenia and has been in and out of institutions for 10 years.
Sí, o sea, oigo voces de que me dicen que haga daño, luego oigo gritos, lamentos, o sea, gente llorando, o sea, sí me pone muy mal. ¿Qué dice mamá? O sea, no hay nadie ahí.
Last year, Oscar was referred to a psychiatric research institution run by the federal government that treated him well. They prescribed him medication that quietens the voices. He now lives with his mother, Maria. ¿Cuántas veces tienes que tomar tu medicamento?
Todos los días.
Todos los días, en la mañana y en la noche.
¿Y si no tomas?
Me siento bien mal.
Muy mal.
O sea, así como le digo, mamá, me falta mi chocho. Sí.
Oscar has been stable for a year. His mother finally feels some hope, but a decade of constant crisis has taken its toll.
Como 5 veces que intentó, se cortó las venas, tomó pastillas, muchas pastillas, y llegó hasta tomar veneno para ratas.
Entonces me da, pues sí, coraje y tristeza.
Maria's greatest fear is that when she's gone, Oscar may end up abandoned in a psychiatric institution. The next morning, we're going to a men's institution again run by the Mexico City authorities called CAIS Cuermanco. Now, according to local sources that we've spoken to, the conditions are very bad, amongst the worst of public shelters in Mexico City. Colectivo members have told me it's going to be a tough day. Despite this, they all turn up. ¿Qué tal, Natalia?
Hoy no me podía levantar.
Natalia tells me she had a sleepless night and that her symptoms are flaring up. She's hearing voices.
Y ahora mismo.
Pues oigo burlas, oigo y pues yo estoy sentado con Oscar y que ellos se burlan de nosotros.
Despite the voices, Natalia insists on carrying on.
Que es parte de la discapacidad y que no hacerle caso porque nada más es aprender a vivir con eso.
We go in with hidden cameras. A member of staff gives us a tour. At the first opportunity, we slip away. We're just surrounded by guys who are just lying there with nothing to do. You know, flies and the smell and the stench is disgusting. Probably the most shocking is the guy over there with no clothes on. You know, you can see he's got a physical disability, and I think he's squatting to defecate. As we walk around the premises, we see feces over walls everywhere. We talk to a member of staff.
No hay un control de higiene. Aspiran todo su defecación. Enferman seguido del estómago.
Kai Esquemanco holds over 300 men trapped together. But the problems here are far more serious than just the sanitary conditions.
Hay tantos hombres juntos. No hay casos en los que haya casos de abuso sexual.
Sí las hay entre ellos. Sí las hay. Seguidos se dan. Uno agarra al débil o el débil agarra al más fuerte, lo obligan.
Nadie no nos para.
Pues no, la verdad no, los doctores ni las enfermeras no dicen nada.
Pero están violando a veces a personas.
Pues sí, hay unos que sí ya son acostumbrados. Ahí sí ya no puedo meterme, yo nomás veo.
We have not been able to independently verify these allegations, but human rights groups have recorded numerous reports of rape and sexual abuse in psychiatric institutions across Mexico.
¿Piensas que aquí es el mejor sitio para este gente?
La verdad no, a mí no me gustaría estar aquí, la verdad. Está muy deprimente.
This place, more than any other, has shaken the members of the Colectivo.
A veces incluso, ¿cómo decirlo? Me distrae.
¿Qué pasa?
Es que de las experiencias que hemos tenido, me siento así mal de cómo están esas personas. Yo me puedo pensar haber acabado en un lugar así.
Sentí algo, o sea, feo, algo de miedo, porque así estaba, porque era algo parecido así. Entonces sí, pues a mí va a tardar porque se me olvide, porque volví a recordar eso.
For the Colectivo, the problem is not only the shocking conditions inside these institutions, but the needless incarceration of thousands.
Pues el gobierno puedo decir que si ellos no están en Kai Esquemanco, ellos van a ser en la calle.
Hacer efectivo el derecho a vivir en la comunidad de las personas con discapacidad, el gobierno tiene la obligación de dar apoyos para que las personas puedan vivir de manera independiente. El gobierno ahorita no está dando ninguno de estos servicios.
Without any government support, family is the only lifeline people with psychiatric disabilities have in Mexico. But having to depend on her family has not always been easy for Natalia.
Y yo recordé cuando yo les decía, es que yo quiero que me internen en un lugar y no quiero estar con ustedes. Entonces al ver cómo estaban a esas personas, yo dije, si tengo todo el apoyo de mi familia, ¿cómo es posible que yo diga eso? Que soy muy afortunada porque los tengo a ustedes, porque no me han abandonado.
Gracias, hija. Gracias por tus palabras que has dicho por nosotros. Eso nos da más fuerza para seguirte apoyando en todo lo que se puede.
Gracias, hijita. No llores, siempre vamos a estar contigo.
This is one of the biggest days in the history of the Colectivo. They're holding a press conference.
¿Estás nerviosa o...?
Pues porque lo que tengo que decir es muy importante y si yo no lo digo con el corazón que les llegue, no va a ser lo mismo.
They're delighted that there's a good turnout of journalists from newspapers and television stations. Virginia Gonzalez Torres, a senior advisor in mental health for the federal government, has also turned up. But not everyone is here.
The government representatives of Mexico City and all the directors of the shelters who had promised to come didn't turn up.
Enseguida se va a ver un video donde cómo encontramos las condiciones en esos dos lugares. La gente dice que nosotros somos locos y la locura es las condiciones en las que están estas personas.
Natalia has delivered a moving speech, and it seems to have made an impression on Virginia Gonzalez.
Es un delito que se permita la violación sexual y que haya gente de autoridad allí lo permita. Delitos.
She may be high-ranking, but she has struggled to make any impact on the state and city authorities who run psychiatric hospitals.
But isn't everybody just passing the buck? Nobody's taking responsibility or leadership.
No, they have to do something. I give the advice. I give the recommendation.
But what about the directors in these institutions themselves? Why do they have to wait? Can't they see? I mean, they must be able to see the human rights abuses that are going on. You know, you can't wait for all this bureaucracy to go.
With mentally ill people, it doesn't matter. Or it hasn't mattered. And they think that. They think that if the person are mentally ill, nobody's going to believe.
She's impressed by the work of the Colectivo and wants them to join some government committees. For people used to being written off, it's a big moment.
Ya hemos pasado a otra etapa y como yo dije, no hay marcha atrás, hay que seguir adelante y todo sea para que estas personas sean reintegradas a la sociedad.
Oscar.
Thousands of people remain trapped in Mexican psychiatric institutions. I felt privileged to have experienced with the Colectivo the birth of a new movement that will hopefully help change all that. And to have met the extraordinary people who from now on will be at the forefront of the struggle for their own rights.
Next week, Marianne O'Hotter is in Delhi reporting on a remarkable campaigning newspaper. The Children's Voice is written by slum kids for other slum kids. It's a paper fighting to change their lives.